Hi everyone, Scorp here. Going to go over a Duelist of the Roses top 10 because somebody asked for my thoughts on more cards. So this is my way of giving thoughts on some of my preferred cards. Probably won't do a bottom 10 list because I think there's probably 300 cards that can go into my bottom 10 list in this game. But starting off with what I feel are the best effect monsters in the game, and we're going to start off with number 10 with the Stern Mystic. This is a Dark Piercing Light on a stick. Not a bad stick either. 4-star for 1500 attack isn't terrible, especially in a light spellcaster deck. It's pretty good. Also, I'm not going to be judging these based on if they're good within their archetype, because that's a whole nother video worth of cards. You're probably gonna splash these into any deck, whereas like a card like Jiraiya or something, you're probably only gonna play that in insects, even if it's almost good enough to make a list like this. So that's the reason that you're gonna see some cards like Stern Mystic, where I can throw this in any deck. And most of the cards on this list, if not all of the cards on this list, if you take out your tech choices because your tech choices are just not doing well against your opponent, you can throw in one of these as a either better tech choice or just a better option. Or most of these on this list are actually just big beat sticks that do extremely well for their deck cost. And that's one of the strengths of effect monsters, is that they do a lot more for their deck cost than what else you can really get out of them. That's why Stern Mystic is so nice. This thing works with Darkness Approaches. If you have a Darkness Approaches deck, you Darkness Approaches after you use this, flip everything back down, and then you still want to know what your opponent has, so you flip them all back up by just flipping this. And this card's pretty nice. Definitely, I definitely use it in light spellcaster decks. Honestly, spellcaster decks should definitely look at this card. But overall, I mean, this is a card you should just look at. Next up at number 9 is Invitation to a Dark Sleep. Invitation to a Dark Sleep is one of those cards that combos extremely well with a couple other cards, but this thing is incredibly disruptive, and that's why it's on this list. Not to mention the fact that it can be used in Jar Control and some Time Eater decks to just really slow down your opponent a whole bunch. If your opponent attacks into this, it's like a 2-turn. 2 of their turns are basically useless for all of their creatures. Super annoying to deal with. It might give you the 1 or 2 turns to come back and bonk your opponent for game while their stuff is all frozen. So definitely remember cards that Spellbind. This slot's also basically for anything like a Dream Clown or Snake Hair or one of those other cards that does, or Phantom Dewan, or there's a whole list of cards that do this when they're flipped or when they're on destruction, and this just stops cards in their tracks. Pick the one that is the right for the situation. If you know that your opponent's going to play like 3 big beat sticks in their entire deck, I mean, don't play this card. This card's great for when your opponent's playing like 25 medium-sized cards that you want to just slow down so that you can get in there with your big beat sticks. It's a little bit high on the summoning level at 5, but a lot of times the decks you're going to put this in, you have summoning power to spare. So that's my thoughts on Invitation to a Dark Sleep, and why I put it on this list. And next up, at number 8, we have Soul Eater. Soul Eater is one of the Immortals on this list. Immortals are super strong because of their Crush card effect. So on Destruction, they create Crush Terrain, which can be super obnoxious for anything but an Immortal deck. Sometimes that's annoying for you to play around, so that's why it's so high up on this list, and not near the number 1 or number 2 slot. This thing is also super useful for thinning your opponent's graveyard so they can't use Monster Reborns. It also thins your own graveyard, but it also prunes the graveyard slots. So if you're trying to get a 3 in a row of something, you can use this to help you out with that. Helps find just dark energies in the graveyard so you can make dark hole triples in the graveyard slots. Or if you're trying to search for that one annoying darkness approaches or duplicating of spell cards like that, where pretty much the only way to get more copies of them is to win them in the graveyard slots. Using a Soul Eater to get your spell shards that you want is super useful. You can also use it to get like Cocoon of Evolution and some other cards. So this card's really great for that kind of farming, but it's also just, you throw this as a 1-of in your deck, you draw it in the late game, and it sucks up 20 cards in both players' graveyards, and this thing is like, it's a 9,000 attack creature. Like, you can't really say it's bad. It's really quite good for a level 4 creature. So definitely, if you need just a 1-card beat stick, and you already have all of the 1-card beat sticks that are higher on this list, Soul Eater might be right for you. It also shuts down Muka Muka and Swordstalker, if you're considering those, although those should be focused more on fusion-heavy decks, where this would also like to be, but this card can shut those down if you need a tech card for that. Next up, at number 7, is Jowls of Dark Demise. Jowls of Dark Demise is another immortal, and again, with the Crush card, it's great for the Crush terrain, which can really disrupt your opponent. But what this card really does is it takes control of an opposing beat stick. So your opponent plays a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon on you, you take control of it with a 2-star creature. So you basically just stole 12 summoning power from your opponent, and now you're going to go beat your opponent up with it. And once they finally do kill it, this thing respawns, and then it dies to another beat stick because your opponent played another one and went to try to kill it, and then that died to Crush terrain. So this thing a lot of times goes 2 for 1 with opponents, and can outright kill them a lot of times because your opponent might play something in terrain that's favorable to them, and then you take control of it with this, and you can just hit their deck leader with it. So there's a whole lot of stuff you can do with this card. Definitely a 1-of option that you should probably look into in some of your decks. And next up, we have Muka Muka at number 6. Well, you guys probably knew it was coming. This card gets stronger than Swordstalker after you have 7 monsters in your graveyard. Any deck that does any amount of fusion summoning can make this thing a 4,000, 5,000 attack creature on like turn 4 or 5. It's really quick. It's actually ridiculous how quick you can make a Muka Muka that's really strong. It's also 2 summoning power, so great for that. Its effect also stacks with itself, so if you Darkness approaches this thing, and the first one had 10 creatures on it, the second one has like 12, I mean, now you have like a 7,000 attack creature. It scales super quick. Definitely something you can consider in your decks if you want another beat stick. So that's going to be a theme of a lot of these cards. This thing's 2 stars, it's 14 deck cost, and it competes with the Blue Eyes White Dragon, or it even competes with the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It's hitting way above its weight class in terms of star level. It's hitting way above its weight class in terms of deck cost, and that's why it's here. Okay, and next up. Okay, and next is Magician of Faith at number 5. You guys know that this card had to be on here. But this card's, along with Massive Darkness, which has the same effect, this card's on the list because it's only one summoning level. It's only 12 deck cost instead of 13, or instead of 18. So it's a slightly better card. But you can do some degenerate stuff with Magician of Faith. Just pick your most broken spell card and then just reuse it. You can use Darkness Approaches with this, and you can use that spell card infinite times. It's wonderful. Dark Hole your opponent like 6 times in one duel with this card. Sounds great. Yeah, good luck if you're your opponent ever getting over or getting through 8 Dark Holes. Next up, I mean, you could use Dark Piercing Light with this. You can use Swords of Revealing Light. You can throw this into basically any deck that has good spells that it wants to use multiple times, and instead of paying 90 deck cost for that spell, you're going to pay 12. So definitely consider Magician of Faith. Oh, and these two also work on traps. So if you, for some reason, have, you know, a Mirror Force, you can just use a Mirror Force. And guess what? It works in either graveyard. So your opponent plays a Mirror Force on you, you can take it from them. This also works on Ruryoku's. There are so many things that are so broken that this card does that definitely warrants itself a spot on this list. And you can do some super degenerate stuff. But unfortunately, this card's a little bit on the slower end. That's why it's at number 5. But definitely consider this card if you have good spells and you want to use them. Next up, at number 4, we have Temple of Skulls. You get tired of your opponent playing Magician of Faith and repeatedly using Darkness Approaches on you? Do I have a card for you right here? This thing stops magic cards. No more magic neutralizing field. No more Swords of Revealing Light. No more getting Darkhold. Your opponent wants to change the terrain that's already favorable to you? Can't do it. Sorry. This card's just too good. And whenever you want to play your own, just flip this thing to attack mode. Real quick. You can play your cards, and then you play another one of these and face up defense right afterwards. And so you have 2 of these on the field. You can play spells and your opponent can't. Super mean. So I definitely recommend having at least one of these in your decks. This card is super strong. Also, if you're tired of your opponent using Soul of the Pure and healing themselves to 9,000 life points, this also shuts that down. There's just an entire class of cards in this game called spells that this card just says you can't use, and that's unbelievably strong. So, definitely warrants itself a spot at number 3. Next up at number 3 is Ancient Tree of Enlightenment. Now, this card does the same thing as the previous card, but for traps. And this thing is only 3 stars instead of 4, so it's even better. And it has slightly better defense. It's pretty decent for a card for 3 stars. But the main thing is that you can turn this thing off. It's a Royal Decree that lets you play down a Mirror Force for 1 turn and let your opponent run into it if for some reason you're playing this in a deck with traps. But against the computer, this card is way better than Temple of Skulls because the computer doesn't really play a bunch of broken spells. So we can debate in the comments down below, which I hope you guys do debate, which of these 2 is better in PvP, because in PvP I can imagine that Temple of Skulls is number 3 and Ancient Tree of Enlightenment is number 4, but that all depends on the meta, so that's all debatable down in the comments below if you guys are so inclined. Otherwise, definitely keep one of these around. There are some times that I just want to throw 3 of these in a deck, just because I'm tired of getting gravity binded. So next up, at number 2 is Green Kappa, and you all knew this was happening. You all knew this card was coming. This card is by far one of the most broken cards in the game. It's 3 stars for just a gigantic beat stick. It copies whatever's the biggest on the field. It'll always go 1 for 1. And you guys have probably seen me abusing field advantages and deck leader ranges and things to make this thing. I mean, I hit a Summon Skull attack, or a Zoa attacked into me in one of the previous playthroughs. Attacked into a Green Kappa. And it was the strongest creature on the field, and Green Kappa killed it by over 1,500 points. Because it was in the right place. Green Kappa, it's a 3-star. Its attack and defense could say zeros for all I care, it doesn't matter. It's 21 deck cost, and this thing will beat a Blue Eyes. It beats a 55 deck cost creature. It will tie any monster, and it turns into very quickly, like, you play this alongside any other, like, a good effect monster that made itself big. You made a copy of your big thing, which using a second really big thing is just good. So that's why I put this at number 2. And then last up, we're just gonna go right ahead into number 1 with Eye Armor. And this thing takes the top spot right over Green Kappa. Because I said, as the attack and defense of this thing doesn't matter because of its effect, the thing that matters is that summoning level and that deck cost. And the deck cost is lower, and the summoning level is lower than Green Kappa. And it has the same effect, and it turns itself right into a big beat stick right the same way. This card is wonderful. The only bad part about this card is its attack animation is not great. Also, watch out for Magical Neutralizing Field, and watch out for Dark Piercing Light, and watch out for open enemy card from leader effects, which it so happens to have open opponent's card. So if you put this as a deck leader, it's really mean to both Green Kappa and Eye Armor, and a lot of the cards on this list, honestly. A lot of the cards on this list are flip effects, which are mostly some of the most powerful effects in the game. Also, if you for some reason need to, you can reset this thing's effect with the Darkness Approaches and use it again. You rarely will need to use that, but 1 Eye Armor is usually enough to actually just win a duel. These cards are so strong. And one of the best things is because warriors aren't that good of an archetype, so you don't really want to play warriors. You can put these warriors in, and say your opponent has a leader ability, like one of the plant leader abilities or something, where they're just messing up your dragons or something. So you can't really play the game as much. You can play one of these, and it's a warrior and not a dragon, so it doesn't get instantly destroyed, which is quite nice. So, that's my top 10 list for effect monsters in this game. I might end up doing another one for the ones that are specific to archetypes, where, you know, you'd play these 10, but they're going to get outshined by the 10 that I just went through. But in their archetype, you're going to play them because they're just that good. They're really strong within their archetype, so I will probably be making that video soon. So let me know what you think. Probably missed some of your favorite creatures, so let me know down in the comment section below, and have a nice day.